Kia ora, everybody. My name is Michael Macaulay from Victoria University Wellington School of Government. I'm here today to talk to my friend and colleague, Dr. Barbara Allen. Barb is an expert in public procurement and performance. She is a senior lecturer in public policy, public management. She also works extensively in the fields of digital governance, particularly in the realm of procurement. And we're here today to talk about some of the recent developments as we move into the recovery from COVID-19, and particularly in response to last week's budget. So, morning, Bob.
Morning, Michael.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
So if I could just start at the top, obviously we're all watching the situation here in Aotearoa very closely. And I just wondered if I could ask for your thoughts generally about the spending package that was announced last week by the government in its budget.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Really exciting times, isn't it, from a public policy perspective? And what we've seen in the last week is this essentially $50 billion COVID response and recovery fund. And we're looking at spending that's across innumerable sectors and sections of society and business. We've got an extended wage subsidy package, business support, huge infrastructure programs, housing plans, trades and training support, jobs around the environment, money for the health sector in terms of the district health boards and Pharmac and a reset there. Early childhood education is getting some money. So it's a broad package that they've been entitling the jobs budget. So that's one aspect to it for sure. But this is going to have deep repercussions across the economy and across our health and well-being for years and years to come. So pretty big numbers there.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I think it's fair to say probably that the eyes of the world are currently watching New Zealand, not just because of the remarkable response to COVID, but of course the response moving into recovery with this pretty landmark budget, like you say. So specifically, Bob, if I could just ask, what do you think some of the opportunities and challenges in terms of the procurement space from the government's point of view?
Yeah, well, I always sort of think back to some of these frameworks that we've been taught along the way. So you'll probably be familiar, or I'm sure you are, with the spenders and guardians idea. And Wildavsky talked about many years ago, but I just saw something recently that Donald Savoy wrote about spenders and guardians. So it's by no means a sort of a lost idea, but this idea that there's certain departments and agencies that are the spenders, anxious to get packages of money and want to hold on to that money, and understandably so. And then guardians who are looking after the money and trying to monitor it, control it, claw it back, and that interplay between the spenders and guardians. So I think, wow, has there ever been a bigger moment of spending than this, and how is that all going to play out? Now that's understandable in in an emergency situation. We have this absolute need, and I totally support this package of spending. But of course we go to, well, what are the implications for how that's going to be spent and how we're going to procure the goods and services that are going to be needed along the way to do this. So in an emergency situation, naturally the government will relax some of its procurement requirements, and you can obtain goods and services under various guidelines that allow you to do it quickly and around some of the normal long processes, which is completely understandable. We have a center-led procurement agency here with MB, the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, as a center-led as opposed to centralized, which means the departments and agencies hold the responsibility for their spending decisions. It's a very flexible procurement framework, regime, what have you. And there's a set of government procurement rules that have had various iterations. The 2012 set has been recently updated in 2019 to allow for something called broader outcomes, which means organizations and agencies are going to have to consider wider elements of society and well-being when they're procuring. And that was a much needed elaboration of the rules. So when we're thinking about how we're going to be spending and just quite quickly, massive spending, say in infrastructure, how are the procurement rules going to be applied? And how are we going to guard, in fact, against all those natural things that go on when you want to procure? You want to go, not in a, people aren't doing it because they want to be corrupt. They're just wanting to hurry up and get the spending done, support their industries, and get what needs doing done. So there's a very good framework in place that New Zealand has built over a long period of time. Now, in terms of the guardianship of the public purse is something that I watch for, and that I'm really quite concerned about how that's going to be done going forward. As supportive as I am of the need for jobs and doing all this quite quickly, there's still a really important role for watching the ways in which the money is being spent and how actually we're going to do all of that. Sorry, a bit long-winded there, but
not at all. And obviously, as we both know, my research interests are in anti-corruption and fraud and that kind of thing. And there's a very strong correlation that massive increase in public spending always increases the opportunities, unfortunately, for things to go wrong. And so I'm particularly interested in you picking up on this notion of the guardianship of the public purse, rather than just, most people I think are probably focused on the spending aspects because it is such a generous budget. But picking up on this notion of guardianship, who do you think then, Barb, are currently the guardians of the public purse here in New Zealand? And are they the best placed agencies to do it? What else would you like to see?
Well, very interesting, because the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment has had some reviews of its procurement frameworks. And one of the big guardians here is the Auditor General. The Office of the Auditor General plays a huge role, and it's a very interesting organization in New Zealand that's taken on a role in helping, in fact, the procurement function to work better. So 3 years ago, approximately, they announced a 3-year review of the procurement framework in New Zealand. So that's a number of different facets to that. And one of them has been looking at what's called here the functional leadership. So MB plays the role of functional leadership for procurement across the New Zealand government. So they are essentially responsible for looking at it in a holistic manner across all of the organizations. And that's looking for economies, efficiency. It's interesting the way that functional leadership of procurement is written up. And so the OAG has been looking at that. It's been looking at local government procurement as one of its aspects. And for example, recently with COVID, it was asked to look at the personal protective equipment and the procurement of personal protective equipment, which of course across the world, you don't have to look too far to see issues that have been raised with that. So they're going to be reporting very, very soon on their findings about what has gone right and what has gone wrong. And that role that the OAG plays is really, really important, because it's not just saying you've done this wrong and you've done that wrong. Well, they're not afraid to do that. They're looking for best practice, support in terms of how organizations can do it better, really pushing the envelope and saying, hey, in fact, with functional leadership, it has said to the State Services Commission, hey, you need to figure out what this functional leadership is and how it's going to work, and is it going to be of value? And I've noticed that some of the things that we have access to have been taken down recently, because obviously everybody's trying to reshape that. And in this current situation, what's that role going to be in terms of how we're going to procure across government? We have all this spending about to be happening with actually no national procurement strategy for watching how that spending is going to happen. Now, I have no doubt we have really good people in procurement. We have excellent policy analysts and people, and there's been a lot of growth and a lot of improvement in procurement and spending and this kind of analysis, but there's still a lot of challenges and a lot of weaknesses as well. So there's going to be a really important role for the OAG to continue in that vein, but they're only one organization. And who else is watching this? Well, MB is trying to put in place its own. And again, that comes back to, can we monitor ourselves? And are we able to get this national procurement strategy in place in time? Because I think we're really lacking this overarching framework for how we're going to do all this spending. The construction sector has come up with this thing called in partnership with government, a construction sector accord, which is an excellent move forward in terms of the sector working with government to try to work at improve some of the weaknesses in the construction sector. And anybody who's followed New Zealand's construction sector, that's been a huge problem around lack of cash flow, workforce retention, the pipeline, and there's a real need to improve the matching of that with what the government's plans are. So there's that construction sector accord that's really involved in the COVID response as well. So that's really good to see. But I think there's some work to do there as you know, is being recognized, but some thinking for us to do as well around, well, we have the spenders, and who are the guardians, and what role are they going to play in all of this? And can we, with the speed at which this is going to happen, I think, are we going to be able to carefully look at that spending?
Thanks. So I've got one final question. We spent a lot of time this morning talking about the government and talking about the kind of that side of things, but what about the supply side of things? What do you think are the challenges and opportunities in procurement there, bearing in mind the latest spending packages and everything else?
Yeah, that's another video, isn't it? Well, the construction center is part of that supply side, which is interesting. And certainly some of the big players have been able to get involved in that and even be involved in helping to develop a response to COVID. But there's certainly a lot of challenges for SMEs. The wage subsidies have gone some way to help support them. There's on the government's given some relief in terms of taxes and interest payments and things like that. But the SMEs that supply a lot of you know, government goods and services are definitely in a difficult position. And we've got to pay some attention to how they're going to be supported over time. And I know there's work going on around that. You know, there's opportunities in terms of information technology, and New Zealand's in a very good place to benefit from its high-tech workforce, from its really innovative people. And I think getting some of the weaknesses of the supply chain management side worked out, which is as innovative as we are, there are quite a lot of sort of breakpoints in supply chains where they actually don't have enough technology to do things quickly or to get, say, into trading relationships, because we are a trading nation, to be able to scale up to say, hey, you know, we're really good at this, and we need to sell that to the world. So there's definitely some work to do there. And some of the small companies on the, you know, on the infrastructure side, there's different associations like the Employers and Manufacturers Association today is pushing really hard to get progress going around, for example, Upper North Island to get its projects off. So we're going to keep coming back to this pressure on infrastructure projects and the big pipelines, but we do need to make sure we continue to focus on the small organizations as well and not let them fall by the wayside too much.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you for those insights. I just want to say a general thanks again to my colleague, Professor Barbara Allen.
Not quite, Michael.
Oh, sorry.
Not too far off, hopefully.
The tongue there, Barb, sorry. Dr. Barbara Allen, thanks again. And if any viewers would like to get in touch with Barb, she is available at the School of Government, Victoria University, Wellington, for all your procurement questions and to share her insights with you. Thanks again, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Michael. It's been fun. Take care.